When you don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hello and welcome to What the Fox podcast with your hosts, Lindsey Fox and Amber Ross. I want to remind you before we dive in, I am so excited for today's episode, and I'm going to try to just hit the pause button there because we have a few important reminders at the start. We are sponsored by Therapy Appointment, which, as you know, if you've been here for a while, is a practical tool for starting, growing, and managing a practice. It was built for therapists by therapists, and they're wonderful, so check them out. We are also sponsored by Lindsey Fox's business, Conscious Healers. And today's episode, that's going to be really important information, so stick around. Lindsey.
Yes, ma'am. Here we are.
Here we are. We're going to do the thing. We have been asked by countless people to have Lindsey be a guest on our podcast and allow me to interview her and allow her to share her story. So you know what? Woo! Ripping the Band-Aid off. We're doing it. Who the hell is Lindsey Fox? That's happening today.
I swear we have been asked this so many times. Amber, are you doing my formal introduction or what?
I love it. What's funny to me, so many of you may not know this, but we have a formal Q&A that we send to guests that are going to join us on the podcast. We ask them to fill it out. So we have a little bit of background on who they are, what they want to share, and just a guideline for the conversation. We don't script these. We don't go from a playbook. We don't rehearse ahead of time. This is very much off the cuff.
And so we're on the same page. Amber threw this whirlwind of an assignment at me literally last night, guys. Last night at probably like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, she said, "Hey, Linz, get your shit together. Fill out the Q&A. We're interviewing you tomorrow." And I was like, whoa, what?
And I would like to point out what's really funny about this is very much reverse of our normal relationship. Typically, you throw a like random assignment at me the day before or hours before, and I'm like scrambling because my MO is planning far ahead and like having things outlined. So it was really fun to be in the other seat last night. I will say that.
Yep. And just so we're also on the same page, I opted in pure Lindsey fashion to not even look at the Q&A or fill out the Q&A until an hour ago. So here we are.
Here we are. We're doing the thing. And yes, I actually would like to share the bio that you wrote down because I love it. And I love it because I think that many people don't see this side of you the way that I do. So I'm going to share. Lindsey Fox is a creative with an old soul, short attention span, and a high emotional IQ. Fact, and fact. She is a proud dog mom, business owner, therapist, coach, podcaster, spiritual teacher, mental health advocate, caregiver, and trauma survivor. All the things, all at once, all beautiful. And I love that you chose to share that, and I am grateful for it. There's not even one area that I would say is more important than the other. Like, you are a whole human with so many dimensions, and I'm thrilled that our listeners get to see a different side of you. The one that I'm privy to all the behind the scenes stuff, obviously, right?
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey because this podcast has been all about mental health, and my role as a clinician and your role as a lifelong learner, and where our coaching interlinks with all the things. And I have found, as we've gone through this process, and even whenever we kicked off season 2, we said, you know what, we're going to get a little bit more personal in season 2. We're going to start sharing more about ourselves and our personal lives and what that looks like. So it's not just about specific mental health elements of like a clinical diagnosis and what things look like and people's stories, but we're going to start sharing some of ours.
Yeah. And how we got here.
Yeah. And I really think as now that a lot has happened in the last year, oh my gosh, so much shit has happened. Like, people have no idea how much stuff has happened in the last year. And frankly, it's honest. I blow myself away and whenever I reflect back on it, I'm like, oh my God, how was any of this stuff possible? And how are we still standing?
Yeah. How did that happen? How did we get through it? How did all of it seem to happen all at once? And like,
Whew.
whew, like a little storm, but a big one.
Yeah, major. And so I'm at a place now where I'm definitely more comfortable. And I'm more comfortable sharing, and I'm at a space and understanding it's time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this because I tell you all the time, you have a very bright light. You are a very special soul on this earth, and not enough people have gotten to see that yet. The time is coming, and it starts, I think, in this moment, right? But before we dive too much into what that looks like
Oh,
or what that
Amber.
means,
Oh, Amber.
what? Listen.
Listen, I told you, I'm not saying a word. I'm just going with your direction today.
Well, I do need you to say words because I am interviewing you. So that is a requirement.
Okay.
And I'm interested in where I'd like to start is how did you decide ultimately that you wanted to put your experience to work in the world, right? So like your childhood, your lived experience as a person, what made you decide, because you've made a conscious decision to take everything you've learned
Yes.
and help other people with it, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big
Really?
question.
We're
Yeah.
gonna start off with
Oh
that
yeah,
shit?
we're going deep. I'm going deep.
Ooh, okay, is there a succinct way to reframe that question? You're asking me
Yes.
why I'm doing
So,
what I'm doing.
Lindsey, why did you decide, like, okay, how did you get into the mental health field? Let's start there. What made you say, this is what I want to be when I grow up? Or this, I'm going to be this when I grow
Okay,
up?
sure. I have a very succinct answer. I never
Right.
planned on doing this shit, and I had no desire to be a therapist, and I still am kind of like, okay, fine, I'm a therapist. So frankly, the short answer is I never said I want to be a therapist when I grow up because my assigned role in life was being a therapist to every single person and family member and friend and boyfriend that I ever had in my life, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So
Yep.
my short answer is I never wanted to be a therapist whenever I grew up. I actually became a therapist by accident, and that's the real truth. And I still am kind of like, okay, how did that shit happen? Right?
Yep. Well, and I think
Um,
I love that piece of your story because you didn't have, like, that wasn't your picture, but you're so wonderful at it. And it's why that, I mean, you obviously, we have a great relationship. We talk about all kinds of things. I've seen you
yeah.
interact with my children, with other people, and you just have a very specific way of approaching people that I think allows them to open up to you in ways that maybe they weren't expecting.
Thank you, Amber. I
Yeah.
have had 35 years of experience under my belt.
34.
Wait, oh my God.
34. You've had 34 years.
30. Okay, actually, you guys, this is so funny. I keep thinking I'm 35 and I'm wrong. Good thing Amber and I are the same age and have the same birth month, and she can hold me accountable for remembering
Yeah.
this.
I will always hold you accountable. Yes, I don't mind growing, and I will grow with dignity and grace, but we're not going to make me older than I am yet. Okay.
Okay, fine. But yes, it's true. I've had this skill set throughout my entire life, and I've had a lifelong experience of acquiring new skills and learning what people need in order to feel safe. And ultimately, I have applied these skills throughout every single career path I've taken. And when I say that, to shed some light of kind of my work history, I I did an international student group trip in high school. It changed my life. I had an opportunity to choose between, like, saving my money to buy a car, go on this trip. My parents said, hey, we'll match you with whatever you save. It's your choice. I chose to do the international trip. And as soon as I turned 17, or excuse me, I was 17 whenever I graduated high school. So as soon as I graduated high school, I called the company. I said, hey, listen, you guys changed my life whenever I was 16. I want to come move to Boston and work for you guys.
So that's how you got to Boston. That was one of my questions, like how the trip from North Carolina to Boston, which seems like that's a lot. That's a very different culture, experience, worldview, all the things.
Yep. And they said, how old are you? And I said, 17. And they said, yeah, you need to be 18 and in college. And I said, okay, well, I'll be starting college in 2 or 3 months and I'll be 18 at that time. And they said, we just started a new division for college, basically like guerrilla marketing for international student group trips for college kids. I hopped on the bandwagon. I did it throughout all of undergrad. I traveled to 25 countries before I had even turned 21. It was absolutely mind-boggling. This is all while I was doing undergrad over at University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And then I remember I graduated a semester early just so I could move to Boston sooner. So I will never forget. It was December 17th of 2009, and that was my graduation day. And as soon as I finished walking that stage, I remember getting a phone call, and it was the Boston office, and they said, "Are you ready?
You're
We
like,
need you
hell
here."
yeah, I
They
am.
said, we want you here in 2 weeks. And I was like, holy shit. Okay. So I just packed up all my stuff in Greensboro, put 5 to 7 boxes worth of stuff on Amtrak and shipped it up north and started my career 2 weeks later. So
That's amazing.
it was kind of crazy in a lot of ways, but so that's kind of where my career started, was within the space of international travel. And then from there, which there's so much into all this, we can spend many episodes or write many books on all the things. But ultimately, I shifted from international travel to hotel management for luxury properties and adhering to like Forbes 5-star standards. It was at that point I was exposed to the Boston Marathon bombings. That was a pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah.
And it really shifted my focus to having a high interest in intelligence agencies, emergency preparedness, how to respond to mass casualty incidents. So my focus then shifted into ultimately becoming a government contractor for an entity of health and human services that was originally founded by Homeland Security. That's a whole nother story. So I got involved with public health, and throughout that public health role of doing emergency preparedness and teaching communities across 17 different cities in Massachusetts how to be more prepared for basically terrorist attacks or pandemics and whatever.
All the things.
Yep. Somewhere along the lines, I was still kind of like bored and unfulfilled and said, I think because also caveat, I was in an unhappy marriage and just filling my life full of work in order to soothe myself,
Yep.
because that's a big part of my history as a whole. And from there, I decided to go to grad school. I ended up getting a research fellowship. It paid for half of my degree. I had no reason to not complete what I started. And next thing you knew, I had a master's in clinical counseling psychology, and I became a therapist.
It's amazing because we've already shared you're 34 years old, right? And you have worn so many hats, so many different jobs, so many different adventures. It's like you've already lived 10 lives, right? Like the amount of knowledge, the amount of experience, the amount of situations in the last year
Yeah.
alone is huge in comparison to, I think, what a average life would look like, right? You are above average.
My
We'll put
life
it
has
simply.
certainly not been, I was going to say, it certainly has not been, my life has not taken the easy route, but I also would not have had it any other way, because I
Yeah.
know that it has fundamentally changed who I am as a person. It has allowed me to understand humanity on a level that I can't even begin to articulate, but it has also given me that ability to connect with humans and their experiences in ways that offer significant healing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that I love that you brought that up, because every part of your story and the intention and focus that you put into everything you do has that level of consciously trying to help those around you heal, consciously trying to provide an environment where people are able to thrive and heal and do more than just survive day to day. And I think
Yes.
I'm seeing you over the last couple of years as our friendship has grown, move and make a very focused effort out of one world, which is the world of therapy, and into this
Yeah.
new world of coaching. And I'd like to spend some time talking about that, because I think it's a logical leap in a lot of ways, and it's illogical in so many others.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So,
I can't help but to
and
laugh at that.
I say illogical not in a like demeaning way. It
No,
is
no.
with the utmost like respect and admiration of what you're doing, because you are moving from a safe job, a stable, you know, normal society expects job,
Yeah.
and moving
Hmm.
into something that is actually a passion of yours, where you can make a difference in both roles, but you
Yeah.
have more control over the difference you get to make and what it looks like.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Amen.
So
I do
tell
not
me,
like
go ahead. You don't like
oh,
what?
I was gonna say I do not like red tape. And
Mm,
I can use this platform in a lot of different ways to get on my soapbox about politics, about
yep.
policy, about the bureaucratic red tape and how insurance companies contribute to our oppression. I have much to say in all of that. I will not waste our time today in getting into that, but I have a lot of strong feelings as a therapist as to how there's a whole nother part of our job that keeps us stuck and our clients oppressed.
Mm,
And I feel that Conscious Healers, my coaching business, is so much more than a coaching business. It is a space where people do have the freedom and authenticity to show up and be exactly who they are in the space that they are, and to witness themselves and pay witness to themselves without judgment.
mm,
Uh, which is huge. And frankly, our healthcare system does not allow us to do that.
yeah.
Um, and that's a huge barrier for people to kind of overcome what they're navigating, because with it comes a lot of stigma, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, um, on top of whatever is already there that brought them there in the first place. And
Hmm.
so I'm not doing therapy as a coach, but what I am doing is assisting with the reframe of what people do have in control of in their life and how to support their journey of shifting out of this stuck mindset and getting them to a different space of wholeness and saying, wow, I have permission and the ability to change my own life, and I don't need to wait for anyone to start over because I can
Hmm.
start today.
I love that. And I have to ask, what was and we've asked this a lot to our guests, right? What was the aha moment that was like when Conscious Healers began to form?
Oh,
Do you have a moment in time where you're like, you know what? I'm going to go do this thing.
no, not really. No, not really. I mean, I have felt called to do the work of supporting people, like I said, my entire
Yeah.
life. I just needed to create a space that felt like my own,
Hmm.
um, where, so originally, I started out doing, I had a coaching business as a sole proprietor called CBT Wellness Center. I would like to use this opportunity to announce that CBT Wellness Center will ultimately become my private practice for therapy.
Woo
And
woo.
so, yeah, so I'll be really glad. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT Wellness Center will not be cognitive behavioral coaching, but I will transition it into a private practice where it can be therapy for those who want to explore therapy. But that's kind of like what started things. But in terms of conscious healers, I think I just knew I needed to go beyond that makeup of a textbook and the clinical approach to things where, I think sometimes society keeps us, and by us, I mean in the world of mental health, you're supposed to adhere to, a certain way of showing up. There's an expectation or societal view of how therapists are supposed to look, behave, act. And
You don't
it's
get to be a
almost
human.
right. It's almost like we're supposed to be desensitized to our own
Mm,
experience and not disclose any part of our experience. And I fully disagree with that because I think that for anyone who hears my story, if we get to it today, um, it's powerful. And I've been through a lot in my life, and it hasn't been for nothing. And I don't think that sitting there nodding your head in silence to help someone work through their stuff is the only way of helping someone get to the other side. Um, I do feel there is power in sharing your story. There's power in the use of self-disclosure. And there is power in facilitating safety with people in a way that might not meet the clinical standard of how you show up to support someone with their healing journey. And for me and for conscious healers, that looks like incorporating a lot of spiritual elements that I do not even begin to touch on in my therapy world. Um, so my spirituality and the interconnection of the mind, body, soul is such a huge part of our healing that I do not really get into as a therapist. Not to say that there aren't some modalities that don't support it. Like there's options out there, but it still
Yeah.
does not feel wholly aligned with what I want. And that's what I can do through my own business.
Yeah. And you decided to do the damn thing and create it and make it happen.
That's right.
And
That's
that I
right.
feel like this is where I do want to pivot to a bit of your story, because that has been a part of your genetic makeup over and over again, right? Every time throughout your story, when you were faced with a challenge, you were not the one to back down. Like you 100%, you're like, how do I make this work for me? What do I need to do in this environment? And I think that that started somewhere, right? And it would have started in childhood.
Well, failure is not an option.
Failure is never an option.
Period. And so that mindset has been present for as long as I can remember. No matter how much you've been through, no matter how much you're going through, failure is not an option. You can fall down, but you're going to pick your ass back up and get going. Like it's just that simple. And so that is a personal mindset, and it's something that I've had lifelong and not something that I would change. So for better or for worse, I've kept going even whenever it's contributed to more suffering. So that's where some of the learning has come in.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we have to learn things the hard way, right?
Girl, I have made shit exponentially more difficult sometimes.
Oh my goodness. Let's actually talk about a little bit of your childhood, because I think you had some really fun experiences, you had some really hard experiences, and I would love for you to share a little bit about what it looked like for you as a child.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a broad brush.
Yeah.
Sure. So I would say there was parts of my childhood I'm actually super lucky and blessed to have experienced, because I feel in today's times, a lot of kids do not get some of the, and I'm going to use the word privilege actually, even though
Okay.
when you hear my story, you're not thinking of it as a privileged childhood. But I had the privilege of being born and raised along coastal Carolina, growing up with my feet in the sand, playing on the beach, living by the ocean, and being a free bird in the water. And it was a beautiful experience that you don't see that much anymore, right? You don't really see naked
No.
babies hanging out on the beach and being able to like be a little free-spirited baby. Like you just don't see that in today's time. So I'm actually
Yeah.
really thankful that I had that as a kid. And I have so many memories filled with going to this like little local gas station and getting boiled peanuts or candied necklace or my yoo-hoo and running down to the beach with my friends. And it was just like those were the times, so I'm
For
really blessed
anyone,
for that.
I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute, because I'm sensing that people might be horrified at the idea of boiled peanuts from a gas station. If you've not traveled in the
Oh,
South, they
oh
are
my
the
God.
best boiled peanuts. Like that is where you find them. It's either in a gas station or on like a
Or the
little
side of the
roadside
street.
stand. Yes.
Yeah. So,
And when you pass those, you immediately stop. You stop.
yeah. Actually, girl, I would not have even thought to insert a caveat there, or a little disclaimer, but,
It's very
yeah,
much a
so
Southern thing. That is not I don't think you find those
yeah.
everywhere. But that's such a fun memory. And I'm so glad that you shared that, because yes, I can see where your gypsy soul, your free spirit, your absolute love of water comes in,
Hmm.
because you and I talk about this a lot. When things are stressful, when things are going
Yes.
crazy, when we need to
Yes.
settle our minds, you and I both
Water is
seek water.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Water is so profoundly grounding, and it's something that I definitely lean into as well as part of Conscious Healers. I think water is a very grounding, natural element that the earth provides that can bring us to a space of centered calmness. So, meditating by the water, drinking lots of water, putting your feet in the water, taking a bath, a shower whenever you're feeling stressed out. I just feel like there's so much power and natural healing properties within that space that, yes, it's something that I definitely utilize. And you'll notice with every single podcast recording, anyone who watches on YouTube, I always have like a liter of water next to me as we're talking.
There's always lots of liquids involved.
Yeah.
So we talked, you shared some fun aspects from your childhood, some wonderful memories, the blessed parts, the fortunate and privileged parts, but those are not the parts that necessarily shaped you into exactly who you are today.
No. The other part of my lived experience has certainly not come from a space of feeling very blessed in those moments, where frankly, I grew up with a scarcity mindset. I grew up and was raised more or less by a single mother. And I say that in the sense that my biological father was not in my life. My mom did have boyfriends from time to time. And actually one of them is now someone that she dated from high school, with someone who she's married to today. And this person was in my life. My stepdad's been in my life for forever, but he worked and wasn't always home or whatever. So for the most part, in my mind, in terms of those early childhood years, I was raised by a single mother. And there was always a concern about money. There was a constant mindset of there being a lack thereof and worrying about bills and how to pay for things. I watched my mom work herself to death, frankly. In fact, I remember living at the beach. The public schools there are absolutely horrendous. They were even worse whenever I was a kid, for sure. Yeah. But my mom actually worked as a janitor for a particular private school, where she cleaned head to toe every classroom and the ins and outs of that school every single night on an overnight shift, just so me and my brother could go there for preschool and kindergarten at no cost. And then that's what she did during her overnight shift, would get us off to school. She'd sleep a little bit, but then go clean condos all day.
Yeah.
She worked her ass off. And I was exposed to that. So when I talk about as like the therapist aspect of observational learning and vicarious learning and how seeing our parents do, it changes like how we show up in the world. I witnessed my mom be one of the hardest working people I've ever seen in my life, to a fault, frankly. But it was always, her hard work was also being paired with, I love you children, as well as, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay the bills?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that took place, and to the extent where I internalized a lot. I certainly held in a lot of my own feelings because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to say if there was a toy that I wanted because I knew it cost money. Yeah. So there was a lot of times where I did put my own needs, so to speak, and one might argue a Barbie dream house or whatever was not a need. But which, by the way,
we're not making that argument today.
Yeah. I would actually like to say my parents, they actually worked their tails off and searched high and low to ensure I got a Barbie dream house one day, which was very cool. But through that, when I think about elementary school, like I was wearing my mom's hand-me-down clothes, like adult clothes on a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old girl.
Yeah.
They don't really fit well. And other kids in school could tell that you know what I mean? So it's like
kids are not nice all the time, right? I mean,
yeah.
I'm going to put that's putting it mildly, but yeah, kids are cruel. Kids are cruel, or can be, not all the time and not all of them.
Absolutely. And so, this is certainly where my business mind has existed for as long as I can remember. So I remember with great distinction, probably being in like second grade, maybe. And I remember thinking if there were clothes that I wanted or toys that I wanted, I needed to earn my own money.
Yeah.
because my parents, like, or my mom or whatever, like they didn't have the money. And so I certainly wasn't going to be the one to make them feel bad about not having the money. So I was just going to take things in my own hands and earn my own money.
And so the hustle begins.
And so the hustle freaking began. You guys, I used to go, this is like, I'm just shaking my head because I'm like, oh my God, Lindsey, like, if I am ever blessed to have children, I just feel like if I have a daughter more specifically, I just feel like I'm going to be into the greatest treat of like, holy shit, if I was like this as a kid, my future child is going to be a fucking firecracker.
It's going to be a wild ride.
So as a kid, I used to go around and pick everyone's flowers. I used to pick all of my neighbors' flowers, create in my eyes the most beautiful bouquets ever, and then go and turn around and resell their flowers to each other at discounted prices like 50 cents, 25 cents, $1. And I did
My
this.
question is, did they ever realize they were buying their own flowers? Like,
Girl, I will never forget. I had this neighbor named Miss Joanne, and she said I went to her house to sell her azaleas back. And she said, Lindsey, sweetie, these are beautiful flowers. And I'm going to have to please ask you to stop picking my flowers, okay?
okay. Did she buy them though?
Oh, okay. No, she turned me away. She was not happy.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that.
She was one of those women who like really took care of her whole yard, and there I was like pluck, pluck, pluck.
You're like, I'll take these and I'll take these.
I say yes. In my second grade mind, this was like the best solution to get my needs met. And this is what, as kids as a whole, kids, they have unique ways of getting their needs met. It might not fall in line with what's right versus wrong, but like if there's a need that needs to get met, we're going to figure it out. It might not always be healthy or smart, but in this case, this is how I saved money. And I would walk up to the local Dollar General or whatever and buy clothes or my favorite stuffed animals or whatever from there. And that way I could get what I wanted without, rocking the boat, so to speak.
Yes, without making anybody else uncomfortable.
Yeah, about that.
I'm gonna let that one sit. Okay. Yeah. So I think you shared with me an interesting story about buying your own outfit and being very excited about this outfit and wearing it to school. And I want to hone in on this for a variety of reasons. So will you please share that?
Yeah, sure. So at this point, I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade. And there's cool people and there's cool people clothes. And where I lived at this time, we had moved around. We moved around a lot. I went to 3 or 4 different elementary schools. I mean, so, when you're moving around a lot and trying to make friends and fit in, and then you're wearing your mom's clothes to school, it's hard, guys. And I remember I saved up enough money. And I remember at this point, my stepdad had been my mom's boyfriend for several years at this point. And I remember sitting down with my mom and stepdad saying like, Lindsey, are you sure this is how you want to spend your money? And I'm like, yes. I want the Adidas t-shirt and the Adidas shorts. And I'm going to own a pair of Adidas shorts and shirt to have a matching outfit, and it's gonna be mine. And those name brands can be really expensive, especially for a 4th grader saving up their money, guys. So
by the way, those name brands still expensive.
Yeah.
Caveat.
I think it was like $30 for a t-shirt or something, which was, in
that was a lot back then. I mean, we were not raised in the dark ages, but still $30 for a t-shirt.
Right.
Highway robbery in the 90s.
I remember buying a $10 nightgown from Dollar General thinking that was a lot. So $30 for a t-shirt was like, what? So I spent my money on getting a t-shirt and shorts. And I went to school wearing my 2 new pieces of clothing with my Nike shoes. And this girl, who I still remember her first and last name with all of her sass, approached me in front of a huge group of people and said, Lindsey, I know you think you're cute, but Adidas plus Nike don't match. So keep trying.
Like, come on, man. Do you
Hmm.
ever, I'm going to side note us for a minute. I know I was not a cool kid. Okay. Do you ever wonder if the mean girls know that they were mean girls? Like in this specific situation, like, is that do we look back
Um,
and say, I wasn't very kind? Because that was not a kind thing to do.
I know that there's certainly some that do. And I can't really speak to the specific instance. I've certainly had people from my past approach me and say a few words.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think actually, let me just full stop here. Amber, you were that girl to me.
I know. That was, yes, it was a
So,
loaded question,
so,
Lindsay.
like, I'm like, wait a minute, you were one of those people to me,
Yes.
you've paused and said, hey,
Mhm.
listen, I've showed up differently or whatever. But yes, we've all,
Yeah.
and to your point, even when you're being a mean girl, there's a reason why you're being a mean girl.
Yeah.
Like we've all got our own shit. So I don't really get stuck there. But this particular moment that I'm sharing from fourth or fifth grade or whatever, like
Yeah.
that was just a moment where it was still kind of like, man, people fucking suck. That's how
Yeah.
I felt. Is like, I just worked so hard picking all these people's flowers, selling lemonade, saving birthday money, all these things to get this stuff. And then that girl pops off and says that.
And it's
Um,
still not enough.
right. And it's still not enough. Yep.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely a moment that I will never forget because of how it made me feel on so many different levels because
Yeah.
I had worked so hard and it was still not enough, which was exactly what I was seeing my mom go through.
Yep.
Right. So I
And
was
it,
already repeating, for lack of better words, the very cycle that I was witnessing. And I say this with great intention because a big part of my life mission and where I feel I belong in this moment of even with my business of conscious healers, I want to help people break those generational patterns of hardship, of trauma, of being stuck. And I
mm,
want people to know that there's a way to do that and that you can do that. You don't have to repeat that pattern just because it's what you know. You might not be able to unknow the things that you know, but you can certainly unbecome who you think you were meant to be,
yeah.
by society standards or by family standards, and you can start over, you
Yeah.
know?
I love
So
that. And it's important to know you can do that as many times as you need to,
that's
right?
right. Hmm.
You try to reinvent yourself, you fall down. We've already alluded to this. You pick your ass back up and you try again. Like, okay, that
Hmm.
one didn't work. Let's figure it out. And
Yeah.
that's a constant theme in your story of finding yourself in a situation and finding yourself a way out of that situation. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that led you to where you are today from outsider looking in, right? I mean, that's why you're
Of
here.
course. I mean, and I mean, a big part also is just the fact that I've been exposed to a lot of significant trauma on a
Yeah.
lot of different levels. I've witnessed a lot of trauma. I've experienced it firsthand as well, and it has been something that has taught me. Um, Gosh, I was going to say there's meaning making, right? So a big part of in
Mm,
my assessment of trauma and how to help people work through trauma is really digging through and finding that meaning making of your experience. That
yeah.
it wasn't all for naught, that you didn't go through hell just to stay in hell. Like you went through it so that you could, get through that, walk through the fire and come out the other side and use your experience to support and heal others. And, frankly, within my upbringing, there were multiple moments of witnessing my mom undergo horrific levels of trauma. And
Yeah.
she had a lot of her own demons as a result, because trauma has a far wide reach and range of a ripple effect that can be created. And I watched her battle and still do. Her entire life has been given over to the trauma.
Mm,
And I know that that's something that I would never want for myself. And I want to help other people be able to stop in their tracks and say, wait, I can't I can't live like this. I don't want to live like this. I need to change. I don't know how, but I'm willing to go figure it out and by all means make a new path for myself. Because ultimately, as I've talked about many, many times here on this podcast, trauma affects us on a cellular level.
Mhm.
And it presents in so many ways. So just more than like the common emotional reactivity and hypervigilance that you associate, and intrusive thoughts, dissociation, all these things that go with PTSD and complex PTSD. It's more than that. It's also that mindset of feeling like that shame keeps you stuck in that
Yeah.
space. That lack of worthiness keeps you in that space of feeling like you are where you belong, which is on the ground, which is less than. And these things manifest in our body and present as like really extreme, like arthritis, fibromyalgia, IBS, cancer. You get these things in your body that your body can't cope with being at this really high stressful cortisol state nonstop for your whole life. At some point it catches up with you.
Yeah.
And I don't want that for my life. And I don't want that for other people's lives if I know that there's a way to overcome it. And that's where I think my past and my present kind of intersect. And also where that spiritual element comes in as well, because there needs to be some kind of meaning making connected to your healing journey.
Absolutely. And I think everything you just shared is why you don't have one aha moment for conscious healers, right? Because it's literally your life is the aha moment for conscious
Yeah.
healers, and every aspect of what you've experienced and what you've been able to do with it. And I
Mhm.
love you actually have a very big event coming up with conscious healers, and I would
I
love for you to
do.
share that. We've trickled in information on our social media platforms, which side note, please follow along, please
Yes, follow.
subscribe, please, all of the things on the Instagram, on the face page. I'm
Oh my
kidding,
gosh.
Facebook. But you really do. You have an amazing event coming up, and I would love for you to share that with the listeners.
Yeah, so actually April 20th, so it's 420, and no, that's not any kind of whatever.
Oh, that hadn't
Someone
even
brought,
occurred to me.
yeah, someone brought that to my attention. I was like, no, it has
I'm
nothing
like,
to do with
no,
smoking weed or whatever. Like, no, whatever. If
absolutely
you're
not.
in, go for it. Have your
Yeah,
cannabis.
whatever.
But no, so I'm Conscious Healers is hosting a women's retreat in Sedona, Arizona. So it starts April 20th, which is a Thursday, and goes through Sunday, the 23rd. So it's 4 days, 3 nights, and a really beautiful luxury 5-star home. And again, this is where my hotel management experience links back in with those transferable skills, because I feel that kind of environment facilitates safety as well.
Yes.
Feeling like all of your needs are met down to a T, and it is a feeling of luxe. I honestly think most the women who are going, I really feel that their number one barrier of committing to go is, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm spending this money on myself. Oh my gosh, I'm not worthy of receiving such beautiful, high quality, linens or experience of luxe. And
Yeah.
because that's just it, right? Is that all of us who have experienced levels of trauma or hardship in our lives, there is that inherent level of self-worth behind the scenes, our core beliefs that are underlying our thinking and behavior patterns that are telling us you're not good enough to do this, and you're not worthy enough to do this. And I beg to differ. I actually think you cannot afford not to do this. And that's truly how I feel for the women who are going on this retreat. It is a whole body, mind, spirit connection of a hard reset of being able to say, you know what, I am ready to just kind of pause, sit in the shit for a bit and reclaim my life. I want to rediscover my joy. I want to rediscover, who I am, and how did I get so far off track, and how do I bring myself back to center? How do I get grounded again? So through that will be an incorporation of certainly some psychoeducation and some kind of, psychological principles and stuff. but also a lot of spiritual elements are linked in with this, from elements of shamanism and drumming and meditation with sound baths, just being outside. And I think nature is amazing. So
Yes.
doing, yoga vortex energy stuff out in Sedona, like that's just all that magical stuff that I feel is so good for the soul. It just
Yeah.
offers you that freedom to really release and to start over, to give yourself permission to let go. And then when you return home, we have follow-up calls with all the girls. I say all the girls, but but the follow-up call just to check in. How are you doing? How's your return to your home life? And how can you keep incorporating what you learned and integrating that into your day-to-day life? So that is the big event that we are hosting.
Thank you for sharing. And I know in my heart that somebody listening to this message wants to grab a spot if there's one available. How would they do that?
Well, they would need to jump on that bandwagon like
Immediately. Do not wait another day.
Yeah, if they want to go, like your time is now, and you need to like send me a DM at Lindsay the Life Coach ASAP.
Yeah.
Or you can go to conscioushealers.com and you can register there. I will say though, I mean, there's at the time that we air this recording, maybe one spot left. I mean, we're pretty much full at this point, but honestly, please take a look at conscioushealers.com and register for the retreat, but also know that there's more retreats in future. So if you miss out on this opportunity, there's going to be more. The locations are going to vary. So in terms of the location, I have to say, for specifically Sedona, this is such a magical experience for a lot of different reasons. I know I never get into astrology. That's not really my thing, but for those who are really into it, it also happens to be at the start of a new moon, a hybrid solar eclipse.
It doesn't happen to be at the start of a new moon. That was an intentional scheduling.
Well, yeah, okay. Semantics. But I mean, my point is like, it's all about new beginnings, right?
Yes.
So there's a new moon, there's a hybrid solar eclipse, Mercury retrograde. All of these things are starting right in the middle of this retreat, right in the middle of Sedona, Arizona. So it's just a very magical and pivotal time in the universe to really lean into your healing, especially in this particular place, because this is really known as like a spiritual mecca. So we encourage you to join us if you're available to do so.
I love it. And I am looking forward to all of the many future events that you will host and that we will get to have some fun together. I wanted to ask you, we're coming obviously to the close of the conversation. I want to thank you for being vulnerable and being willing to share parts of your story. There's so much more that we could get into.
I was going to say, we didn't even scratch the surface, but sure.
We will get into it because I think that this is going to unfold into a beautiful conversation over the next year, right? But was there one key takeaway that you wanted our listeners to hear today?
Sure. I think one in particular that I continuously share over and over and over again is the fact that it's never too late to start over. It is never, ever, ever too late to start over. You get to do what you want with your life. And I think that is the biggest takeaway of them all, is that you're allowed to change your mind. Once you've committed to something or a path or whatever, you're allowed to change your mind. It's okay. Absolutely. You get to create a whole new path whenever you're ready. So if you're feeling unhappy, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like, I have to stay in the marriage for the kids. I have to, stick with this job where I'm miserable and people treat me like shit. No, you don't have to tolerate the abuse. No, you don't have to be unhappy. No, you don't have to feel stuck and stay in that space of being stuck for the rest of your life. Like, you get one life and life is so short. It is a real bummer if you're going to choose it being stuck. You get the choice and the power to change your mind. So I encourage you to do so if you're in a space of feeling that way. If you needed a sign, this is your sign.
Yeah. And if you need help figuring out all of that and how those steps come together and, what that reframe and rebirth looks like, then I highly encourage you to reach out to Lindsey. You can find her on Instagram. Obviously, you can find her connected to the What the Fox Instagram, because while we did do this interview style and she is my special guest today, she is the beauty, the brains, and the brawn behind all of this. So, Lindsey, thank you. I'm grateful that you shared your story. I know there's more to come. And to our listeners, very grateful that y'all stuck with us, that you are here in season 2 with us, and that you continue to join us as we create a space to share and learn and grow.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much to our listeners. You know, without you guys, we couldn't be here today. So, your dedication and loyalty to this podcast has meant a lot to both of us. And so, if you are not already subscribed, or if you have not already left a review, we really, really want to ask you to do that, please, because the more 5-star reviews that we get on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, it actually helps boost us in the algorithm. So, please, as a thank you to us and what we put out there, we ask that you please give us a review so that we can get bumped up to new listeners like you.
Yeah, help us spread the word. And with that, we'll see y'all next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.